What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot to talk about. A lot of newsworthy stuff is going on, and we're going to get through all of that before we open up the phone lines. Meanwhile, Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. And today in our second hour, Ammon Bundy will be our on-air guest to talk about what's been happening ever since the standoff at the Bundy Ranch and more recent activities by the Southern Poverty Law Center to try and basically smear patriots and nationalists as being white separatists and other kinds of stinky people you should not want to talk about. Anyway, tonight is the final presidential debate. Hopefully be a little bit more restrained and calm than the first debate, certainly guaranteed to be a lot more interesting and exciting than the second debate, considering the second debate didn't happen. And of course, they're still going on and on about the mute button. Apparently, the Trump campaign is sending a representative to stand in the booth where the mute buttons are located to make sure it's not being abused, because the reason Trump was opposed to the mute button was because apparently it was being used against him selectively when he was debating Hillary Clinton, and he doesn't want that to happen again. So he's going to have somebody there making sure that his mic is unmuted when it's supposed to be here. So they're going to be going at each other, and again, the format is the moderator will ask a question, choosing the topics, and a lot of people are saying, why does the moderator get to choose the topics? And, you know, President Trump is saying we should be talking about foreign affairs, which is where he's strongest, but the moderator is saying, no, that's off limits. We're going to talk about puppy dogs and kittens and flowers and things like that the liberals really like. So the moderator will ask a question. Trump and Biden each get an uninterrupted 2 minutes to respond. Then the mute buttons come off completely and they go at each other. And at some point, we're sure that Donald Trump is going to get in some digs on this emerging Hunter Biden email scandal, the allegations of money laundering, and it's going to be interesting to watch this one tonight here. So that'll definitely be fun. Get out the beer and pretzels for this one. Okay, now earlier today, the Judicial Committee looking into the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett held their vote to refer the nomination to the full Senate. The Democrats boycotted the entire process, but it went through anyway. So Amy Coney Barrett has moved one step closer to confirmation, probably on next Monday. Now, the Democrats are saying they're going to boycott that as well, and they're going to decorate the chairs with photographs of people with pre-existing medical conditions, as they did today in the committee session. So we'll see what happens there. But at this point, it does look like Barrett is going to be confirmed to the Supreme Court and will be on that court for all of the coming election lawsuits, of which there are going to be many. Okay. All righty. Now, apparently yesterday, Senate investigators released a report outlining a long list of the Biden family conflicts with shady overseas business activity with foreign adversaries while serving in the upper echelons of government. Actually, they were serving themselves, is what it comes down to. This obviously raises national security concerns with potentially criminal conduct and threats of extortion. And that's the real problem. Hunter Biden, and through him, Joe Biden, are subject to blackmail by everybody they did business with, which at this point appears to be Ukraine, China, Romania, and who knows who all else. Now, Joe Biden's ex-business partner has flipped on the Bidens and is saying that Joe Biden did know about his son's deal with the Chinese energy firm, and that the former Vice President Joe Biden is the big guy mentioned in the email sent to get 10% cut of the deal. So This all goes back to 2017 and ugly, ugly stuff here. GOP Senator Ron Johnson is asking the Department of Justice's Inspector General Horowitz to open an investigation into the FBI's handling of Hunter Biden's laptop. Now, the FBI is now admitting they had the laptop since last December, and they're refusing to say why they didn't mention that before the Trump impeachment, because it's now coming on out that Donald Trump got impeached for what Joe Biden did, just as he got investigated for 3 years for what Hillary Clinton was doing. So anyway, the official story so far now is that the laptop belonging to Hunter Biden is linked to an FBI money laundering probe that began in late 2019. And they're basically saying the laptop was called to their attention by the owner of that computer repair store, who saw something on the hard drive that he felt needed to be reported to the authorities. Now, obviously, looking at the emails and possibly not being aware of what was going on with China or Ukraine, I doubt it was the emails that caught the attention of the computer repair person here. And there's an interesting telling headline over at stationgossip.com. Hunter Biden's laptop connected to FBI money laundering probe, other unknown specified unlawful activity. Gee, I wonder what that might be. Now, over at One American News Network, Chanel Rion is saying that multiple reporters have now viewed the Biden laptop contents, several images of a minor that justify immediate attention. Now, remember, the law is that if a computer repair technician finds certain things on a hard drive, they are obligated to report them to the authorities. And one of these is child porn. Okay? Now, here's where it starts to get real interesting, and you start to see why so many people are trying so hard to make this story go away. Okay, apparently, and this is coming from Fox News, there was an email dated May 15th, 2017, in which Biden's brother, Jim Biden, shared a list of key domestic contacts for Phase 1 target projects. This is the Biden-China joint venture, and on that list of names is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, and former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, among others. And what it looks like is going on is when you have a crime family that is engaging in this sort of thing, is you invite everybody in for a little piece of the action, a little taste of what's going on. The Clintons did it with the Clinton Foundation. Now it looks like the Bidens were doing the same. And this is why there is such an effort, including tech censorship through social media, to make this story go away, because it's no longer just about Hunter Biden or Joe Biden. It is about a culture of corruption that permeates our entire upper level of government. Okay? And that's why they're so desperate to make this go away. But it's not going to go away. It's coming out drip by drip. And I'll tell you, when it is finally confirmed that there is child porn in the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop, America is going to sit up and take notice, and they're going to want to know what the heck has been going on. So Senators Johnson and Grassley are on the warpath against big tech and the corporate media for the obvious blatant censorship of the Biden scandal, which now we know what the motive behind that is. There's a lot of people whose necks are on the chopping block for this one. So the chairman of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, Ron Johnson, said the media has been ignoring the report put out by his committee last month, as well as recent developments relating to Hunter Biden's email. And Johnson pointed out the 87-page report revealed this network of connections between the Biden family and players around the world, including Chinese nationals. He added the findings raise a lot of troubling issues, and the fact that the corporate media is suppressing this important information is a scandal. Yes, it definitely is. And the corporate media is still at it. Google has terminated the Dollar Vigilante and Last American Vagabond YouTube channels. So they're still out there trying to silence anybody who's talking about any of this information here. We mentioned this, I think, earlier in the week. There is a website up called Donald Trump Watch that reveals the addresses and names, doxing information of Trump donors, supposedly for Antifa and Black Lives Matter terrorist targeting. I imagine that probably Trump supporters could go on this watch website and make a whole bunch of new friends to sort of network together. But it does look like it's a terror tactic here to make them feel afraid. And this is going to backfire on them. There was a discussion on Fox News earlier today that the corporate media polls are completely untrustworthy and inaccurate, not just because they're oversampling on Democrats, but because Trump supporters are now afraid to say that's who they're going to vote for, out of concern that their names will be exposed on the internet and their homes are going to get burned down. So we'll see what happens on that. Biden is facing a backlash for referring to America as an idea that we've never lived up to. Now, I heard the complete clip, and I think I understand what he was trying to say, but he didn't say it very well, and it was, certainly taken as being a bit of an insult to America and its people. All righty. Yesterday, a lawyer for the Republican National Committee and the Iowa GOP has filed a Federal Election Commission complaint accusing Iowa Democratic Senate candidate Teresa Greenfield of pretending to use volunteers in order to claim an unmerited exemption from campaign contribution limits. Oh, out there breaking the rules yet again. All right, I want to talk a little bit about this Sacha Baron Cohen's latest stunt with Rudy Giuliani. And when it first came on out, it was given front page coverage in the British newspapers, the tabloids over there, who didn't question the reality of what they were being told. Now, the story that came out with a couple of still frames is that Giuliani was caught in a room shoving his hand down the front of his pants with this actress standing in front of him. Well, this has already been debunked. And of course, if you've seen what Cohen has been up to in the past, you realize this is what he does. He suckers people into situations. He plays dirty tricks on them to make them look bad. So Sacha Baron Cohen basically attempted to take down Rudy Giuliani, probably in revenge for trying to take down the Bidens here. And apparently what really happened in that room is that he was lured to the room with the idea it was going to be an interview. He was given a microphone to wear, and when the interview was over, the actress was helping him remove the microphone and in the process untucked his shirt. So Rudy Giuliani just quickly tucked it back in. That's what was caught on camera and misconstrued as a sexual activity here. Okay, now Rudy Giuliani is claiming that the Borat honey trap is a hit job to try and distract voters from the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. Okay, and I don't think it's going to work because you can clock the lifespan of this latest Sacha Baron Cohen scam with an egg timer here. Getting into the area of election fraud, and boy, there is a lot of it. Two of the top Republicans on the House Oversight Committee have mailed letters to election authorities in New York City, Los Angeles, and Ohio that are shipping updated mail-in ballots to certain voters who got wrong or mislabeled ballots, raising concerns of error or fraud, emphasis on the fraud. The letters are asking the authorities about whether or not they have an exact count of mislabeled or wrong ballots, how they are assuring voters they are destroying the wrong ballots, how they intend to track any duplicate ballots, and how the jurisdictions will have people who are submitting mail ballots from voting in person. And so it's just out there. It's a mess. And again, in my opinion, Trump's biggest failing is he didn't clean up this mess. And and he should have known better after what happened in 2016, because there was massive election fraud there. Now, earlier today on Twitter, there was a video that captured people altering votes at a ballot station. Now, they didn't say where it was, but it's like they're not even trying to hide it. It's like that photo that was shown the other day of a stack of driver's licenses at a drive-through balloting window so that illegals could vote. I mean, it's just right out in the open here. Story from NBC News. Oddly enough, they're carrying this one. A cybersecurity company found a hacker selling personally identifying information of more than 186 million voters. They had the voter registration data of 186 million Americans. Much of the data identified by TrustWave, which is the cybersecurity company, is publicly available. And almost all of it is the kind that is regularly bought and sold by legitimate businesses. But the fact that so many names and email addresses and phone numbers and voter registration records were found for sale in bulk on the dark web underscores how easily criminals and foreign adversaries can deploy it, as the FBI is claiming Iran has done recently by sending emails designed to intimidate voters. Well, don't forget that story that we had the other day where the security is so weak on voter portals that anybody with this basic voter information can log on in and either change or delete the ballot. I mean, it's just wide open. And should Trump win re-election, should the attempt to steal this election for Biden crash and burn, which I'm hoping it'll do, I'm definitely going to be, urging him to look at this election system and clean it up. It's not going to take a lot other than you need to have a national standard. And I know you're going to get this argument about states' rights, and the states have a right to run the elections any way they can. But I think this election is going to prove that the state election commissions are incompetent. They cannot do the job. They cannot keep the elections from being fraudulent. The election commissions themselves are too politicized. And it's a mess. It's made the United States the laughing stock of the world when we're out there preaching to other countries about democracy and the will of the people. It's disgusting. It really, really is. If we had honest, verifiable, accurate, U.S. citizen-only elections, Trump would win re-election in a walk. Because of all the cheating, I honestly don't know what election day is going to bring. I think election day is going to see a Trump landslide, and then we're going to see lawsuits and trickery, and oh my goodness, we forgot to count these 15,000 ballots over here, and they're just going to pull out the plugs to try and get the election away from Trump. And I have to be very honest, if Trump survives that, if he is basically declared the winner of this election and due for a second term, I am afraid that there will be an attempt on his life. I think the people against him are just that desperate and panicky. And if there's anybody from the Secret Service listening to this broadcast, wear your Kevlar unders. Make sure Trump is wearing his Kevlar, and just drink a lot of coffee and be alert. That's all I can say. Okay, getting on to the COVID-19, which continues to be politicized by the Democrats. They're running ads out there about, more people died than should have because of Trump's mismanagement. Well, we don't really know because there have been so many different sets of numbers running around here. And now they're looking at the fact that the regular flu is down by 95% this year, raising the possibility that a lot of these so-called COVID cases were just the ordinary seasonal flu and were being mislabeled again for political purposes. But we got to take a break here for some commercials, and we'll be back with more news after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and I just got an email from somebody saying that CBC is still reporting the Sacha Baron Cohen takedown of Giuliani as a fact. In other words, they're going with the original story that Giuliani was caught in a compromising position with this actress And it has been debunked, but CBC is still out there. And I imagine probably a lot of the corporate media are still going with the original claim here. They're desperate to derail this inquiry into the Biden laptop. And if this thing about primary contacts over the China deal is in fact accurate, then there are a lot of people inside the Beltway who are dirty with this one. Okay, getting on back to COVID-19. There's an article over at Global Research, and it's written by somebody who's in the healthcare field, and basically pointing out the tests that are being used for COVID-19 are not specific for that virus. And they're saying there are no reliable tests that specifically look for COVID-19. They're testing people for any strain of a coronavirus, and there are quite a few of them, including flu and the common cold. And basically, this person is saying that every action and reaction to COVID-19 is based on totally flawed data and a lot of political, and this is why you keep hearing that most people with COVID-19 are showing nothing more than cold or flu-like symptoms. That's because most coronavirus strains are nothing more than cold and flu. And the few actual novel coronavirus cases do have some worse respiratory responses, but still have a very promising recovery rate. Okay. Turning to the international news, Moscow finally conceded to get the START nuclear control treaty back on track and to extend it for another year, and they accepted additional terms. For 1 year, Russia and the United States will cap both deployed and non-deployed nuclear warheads, the numbers that each have. And the non-deployed warheads have never been part of a nuclear arms limitation deal because it's impossible to verify. But that was one of the demands the United States placed on Russia, and Russia finally said, okay, we'll go with that one. And hopefully this is going to be the last we hear about that one, and the world will be safe from nuclear weapons for at least another year. Maybe, we don't really know, because of another very troubling story that came out of antiwar.com, where the United States is urging countries that have ratified a United Nations treaty to ban nuclear weapons to withdraw their support. Now, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is approaching ratifications from 50 countries, which is needed to bring the treaty into force. And so, this is a significant thing the United Nations is trying to do. If they get 50 ratifications, the treaty goes into force and everybody has to abide by it, and the United States doesn't want to give up its nuclear advantage over the rest of the world, and that's why they're trying to get other countries to withdraw their support from this. Okay, getting on over to Armenia and Azerbaijan. And just quick little message there. Apparently, Ukraine has become the hub for Turkish weapons supplied to Azerbaijan. And apparently, these cargo planes are being tracked successfully on the Flight Radar 24 website. And apparently, there was supposed to fly from Kiev to Milan, but somehow appeared at Baku, according to this flight tracker. Now, apparently somebody forgot to turn off the transponder or some other such thing, and the subterfuge was revealed here. All righty. Now, yesterday, Turkish Vice President Fuat Oktay said that Turkey would not hesitate to send troops to support Azerbaijan if requested. Oktay added that at the moment, no such request has been made. Meanwhile, satellite images are revealing 13 Russian MiG-29 jets at an Armenian base. This is seriously ramping up now. So a satellite image captured earlier in the year revealed the presence of several Russian-made MiG-29 jets at an airbase in Armenia. And apparently These jets are believed to be part of the Russian aerospace forces, and they were stationed at a military airport in Yerevan that in the past was known to host Russian military exercises. Meanwhile, over in Moldova, like we are not messing around with enough countries, Washington could be organizing a new color revolution and mass protest in Moldova like the ones already gripping Belarus and Kyrgyzstan. The Moldovan elections are scheduled for November 1 and have 8 presidential candidates participating. The main rivals, however, are current President Igor Dodon, considered pro-Russian, and the former Prime Minister Maya Sandu, who's considered pro-European. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials here, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines. Mike is telling me that the lines are lighting up already here. The phone number, again, is area code 512-248-8252. And before we go to the phones here, somebody just mailed me a story. Do you remember Hunter Biden's child support settlement? And it was rather low because he claimed that he was poor and he didn't really have the money that was being demanded by the mother. Well, with the revelations coming off of his laptop about the amount of money that was floating around, the case is being reopened. Well, you know, good for her. What can I tell you here? All righty, getting on back to the international news here. Europe is gearing up for another military intervention in Libya. And it's like those poor people have not suffered enough. But again, the whole point of going on in there and killing off Muammar Gaddafi was to bring Libya into Western-style private central banking and to basically keep control over its oil, and mostly to get rid of the Libyan gold dinar. Well, the puppet government that was put in has been kicked out by the people, and it's still fighting back and forth going on there. Now, when Secretary of Defense Mark Esper announced the Trump administration's plan to withdraw 12,000 troops from Germany, he said about half the soldiers will go home and the other half will be redeployed across Europe. And comments from the Pentagon chief Tuesday suggest that he's going to bring home fewer troops home than originally planned, and the redeployment is going to be over toward the border with Russia. More of that encirclement going on. All right, we got callers on the line here. Let's go with Joe in California. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Joe, are you there?
Aloha, Mike. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You're on the air.
Okay. Mike, there was a report on yesterday's True News newscast.
Yeah.
You haven't mentioned it yet. They reference a former libertarian candidate for the presidency. I believe his name is Wayne Root. And
Okay.
he says that based on his high-level contact sources, that laptop or laptops contain video of Hunter Biden raping and torturing, applying torture to young Chinese girls.
I'd heard that story before. We mentioned it briefly. I didn't have the fact that he was engaged in torture, but that would certainly explain comments by people who've seen the contents of the hard drive that some of it made them want to vomit.
Right. That's what this gentleman said. I don't know if it was either one or multiple children, Chinese children, involved, that were involved. But yeah, because you had not. I'm a little worried that this part of the story is going to be ignored, and they're bringing in this money laundering aspect of the story. I don't know if that money laundering is just cover to.
Well, it's a limited hangout
to hide this sexual scandal.
Yeah, it's a limited hangout, and they're copying to the money laundering because the reaction of most Americans to money laundering is, they kind of all do it here.
Exactly.
But, you know, when you have small children being sexually abused, and if your source is correct, you know, actually being tortured, that's going to get a visceral response from people, and they're really, they're going to get angry. Because I think most normal human beings have very strong parenting instincts. where children are supposed to be nurtured and protected and cared for, not used as playthings. But I'll tell you this, even without the torture aspect, that video, if the Chinese government has a copy of it, and they almost certainly do, then they've got a lock on Hunter Biden and through him a future President Biden. So we're talking about a threat to our national security here.
Exactly. Basically, if Biden wins the election, the United States will become a province of China. It's that simple.
Yes.
But I'm afraid that absent this sexual scandal seeping into the corrupt corporate media, you're right. These financial crimes, this corruption, it won't matter. It kind of like has the ring of the '92 campaign, where at the very end, H.W. Bush was criticizing Clinton about his protesting against the U.S. overseas, like when he was in Europe and in the Soviet Union, if you recall that campaign.
I recall that.
And people didn't care, and the country was a lot better back then. But I'm afraid I agree with you that the financial aspect, people will just say, well, they all do it, and it is true. I mean, I'll bet every member of the House and Senate, their families profit by access.
Yes.
To congressmen and senators. So that has no difference. It's the sexual scandals, the sexual aspect of this that makes this different. And if there is video and you have to assume the Chinese government has that same video, then they own Joe Biden.
Yes, they absolutely do.
Last question, Mike. Do you see any scenario, any possibility that Joe Biden steps down before Election Day, Kamala Harris either moves up to the presidential slot or they bring in somebody else?
Well, that's certainly possible. It would make more sense if Biden steps down because of this scandal, and I'm expecting this whole sexual side of the scandal to break the first part of next week. Then Kamala Harris would move up and be the candidate, and the Democrats would say, well, all you people who voted for Biden, we're going to count your votes for Kamala Harris and not give you a chance to change your mind. Worst case scenario is Hillary steps in if Biden steps down.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, there's a lot on my mind, and it's all dealing with the aftermath of the election. If Biden does get in, that's a terrifying aspect, but even more frightening if there's chaos, if there's resistance to whatever the outcome that is declared. Think of what happens if there is maybe not a civil war, but skirmishes throughout the country. Look who we're surrounded by. I mean, the U.S. is surrounded by. We know Justin Trudeau has a special relationship with Castro, and Castro is how far away from the U.S. We know Mexico and many countries in Central America and South America have long-held hostilities towards the U.S., and they now have people from the caravans that came invading into the U.S. and got in. Mm-hmm. They have all kinds of people there. What is all of that going to imply? There has got to be, I guess my first question should have been, to whom is the military loyal to?
That is a very, very good question. One would hope they're loyal to the President of the United States of America, but you're absolutely right about all those people from South and Central America. Those countries have a very good reason to hate the United States, and it has to do with a lot of game playing that was done in their countries by the CIA, to change their governments. A good example being, the installation of the dictator Pinochet in Chile. The United States has a long history of messing around with other countries.
Kissinger should have been. Kissinger and what was his name? The Polish Brzezinski.
Yes.
All of those were responsible for multiple deaths and tortures and murders throughout South America and throughout the world. So not only do we, and anything that involves the U.S., involves Canada, involves the whole continent. And we both are considered, both the U.S. and Canada are considered the perpetrators, or at least Canada has been the silent partner to anything that's been going on or done by the U.S. And Canada's military has been controlled by the U.S. military for decades. Even our social institutions, our hospitals, have been used as by DARPA for experimentation that they couldn't. I mean, I know. There are a lot of stories. They're not just stories; they're facts. That a lot of mind control experimentation was done in Canada by DARPA. Now the concern is, so there's a lot of hostility towards North America, the white privileged countries. And
yes.
We also have a lot of South Americans here in Canada. Apparently, the Canadians were recruiting. A friend of mine from Salvador told me recently that Canadians were actually recruiting in El Salvador at least 15 years ago, bringing them up here. And we Canadians didn't even know.
Yeah.
So there's something that's been going on for a long time. Now we also know China's hostile towards us. Towards North America, and what's going on now between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and Ukraine is involved. And remember, the Ukrainian president that was recently elected is Jewish, and Israel has a very strong interest in what happens in Azerbaijan.
Yes.
So all of these people, I mean, different parts of the world, we're on the verge of outbreaks of extreme hostilities and very dangerous hostilities.
Yeah, it's a dangerous time.
If the U.S. is not strong enough to hold it together, we're in trouble.
Yes.
Because they're all here. They're all right here, right next to us. Probably plants that were here to, if not instigate, certainly engage in all the hostile activities. The big question, the only one that can actually protect us, is the military. And are they, never mind loyal to the president, are they loyal to the Constitution? Is there any way of gauging? Or is the military hostile because they feel they've been abused and used by the U.S., who has been serving the corporate interests of the elite? Yeah. There's a saying that I've heard that really governments are a permanent institution of elite to exploit the masses.
Yes.
I can't think of a better description for governments that are. Is there any government anywhere in the world that we can look at and say it is honorable, ethical, and it exists to serve its people?
I don't know. Antarctica, maybe?
Maybe. Maybe. But who knows? It's just the question that we really ought to be addressing right now, I think, or looking at, is it's getting awfully late in the game. It's nearly midnight.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But,
and, you know, I think.
What about, is the military capable and willing to defend North America or Canada, because Canada and the U.S. military have been so closely intertwined? Are they prepared to protect this country? Are they ready for it? And maybe one of your callers knows more about the military than I do. I'm just speculating here. But whoever, if Trump does get back into the White House, I think that the White House needs to go through an exorcism.
Yes.
Since
I would
Obama,
agree with you on that one.
Exercised. Yeah, it should have been exercised after Obama. Or even the Bushes, for God's sake. I mean, look how corrupt they were.
Yes.
We'll never really know. We'll never really know what happened. And someone said, yes, recently, I think, that we haven't had a good president since JFK, and before that, Eisenhower. I would say even JFK was compromised. We haven't seen a good president in the White House since Eisenhower. And even he didn't have the power over the military. He warned everybody, beware of the military-industrial complex, because obviously he did not control it either. And if a man like that did not control it, what do we expect from someone like Trump, who never even served in the military, assuming he even gets back in? If they've got to feel some kind of respect. Eisenhower was respected by the military.
Yes,
but
he was.
even he said beware, because he could not control them. So maybe some of your callers have something more optimistic to say. I'm just extremely worried for all of us.
I am too. I mean, you can just hear the war drums beating in the distance.
Yeah, I'm just worried about what we're surrounded by. And by the way, Castro, everyone seems to think that Castro was some kind of brilliant revolutionary. Castro was an idiot. I know people from Cuba who said that he could not even mount any guerrilla attacks on Batista. And the one who actually came in, the architect of the Cuban Revolution, was Che Guevara.
Yes.
There was a well-educated, intelligent man, but he was also very sadistic. And so Castro was an idiot, and yet when the Cuban people allowed not only Castro to remain in power, but when he died, his brother takes over. I mean,
yes.
If that's not a family tyranny, tell me what is. So I just, and then we have this idiot Justin here, who obviously, who himself acknowledged he couldn't even finish high school without failing a whole bunch of high school courses. He's in charge here, and he's running this country into the ground. It's dreadful what's happening under Justin Trudeau. People don't know they're talking about a guaranteed annual income when we're talking about billions, close to $1 trillion, billions in deficits, and probably verging on $1 trillion or more in debt. And this is for a small country like Canada. We're in desperate trouble here. And so unless the U.S. props us up, because whether or not Canadians like to admit it, we have always been propped up by the U.S. We've always been riding the coattails of the U.S. Mm-hmm. And if the U.S. is in trouble, we're in much deeper, deeper trouble. But it's right now, what it hinges on is, can the military, are they unified? Are they capable of providing competent leadership and a unified action in terms of protecting this country? And the worst part is the dissidents, the subversives, are right now amongst us. We can't even we can't just go simply by what language do they speak, how did they get into the country? They're
yes.
here, and we don't know which of them are plants, which of them are instigators and here to subvert and to intentionally bring down the U.S. and Canada, with knowing that we had Trump, someone like Trump and Biden, two not particularly admirable choices. Never mind their ages, never mind their personal histories and their family histories. Mm-hmm. This is not, this is the kind of time when you need someone like an Eisenhower, and even he had to leave
even
on
he
a
had
very
limits there.
pessimistic
All right, well,
note.
Layla,
Thank you.
I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. We got more callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. And welcome back. We're going to go back to the phones and try and get through some phone calls before top of the hour. And Ammon Bundy, who's our second hour guest. Mark in New York, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Let me take you off the speaker. First, I'm excited about Ammon Bundy, and I have followed his story, and I think it's wonderful he's on the show, and I support him. A guy from New York, over here, up in New York, we love you and support you, Mr. Bundy. Going forward, this morning while I was making my coffee, I was listening to NPR and WNYC, and I wake up and I hear San Francisco journalists talking about xenophobia and immigration and interviewing a rainbow of politically correct social identity, DACA, and people with undocumented parents. And they're going on for like 15 minutes. And then after the show, I got sick of listening to them saying how unfair America is and all that stuff. And one of them was from El Paso, Texas. And they were talking about Mexican Americans along the border and all in San Francisco. And then I realized, wow, today is with the more stuff about Amy Coney Barrett going on and stuff, having to vote and not showing up. Now they're talking about, I found it interesting that, and my point is that why didn't they bring up the xenophobia? They kind of did with the racism, but they didn't use that X word, which I found very strange that the Democrats didn't bring that up, but now they're pushing it all over the liberal news, progressive news. And that's why I think that they should, if they give NPR money and stuff the way Pelosi did, the way they should do it with alt-right stuff and independent broadcasting with you guys
Yes.
is that they back the money. So whatever we give to you, they double it. And then the people that win the most, have the most people, they get an extra 10% or 15% because you do the work then. You've gotten the listeners, you go out and you do the promotion. I'd love to help out anyway with that. But that's how they could give it. That way you can prove it. It's all by who's listening and who's paying, and the government backs it up. And they just got to sign up and show that they've been doing their business for 5-10 years. But anyway, again, I said a long time ago, elephant in the room for me is this birthright citizenship, and nobody asked her about it, and it's going to come up. And today, got Juan Williams on there going, it's out of whack. For me, the progressives, and putting in these court people for the last 50 to 100 years, it's been a progression. Now it's coming back with Trump, and it's a momentum. It's just starting small. I know Trump isn't perfect, but we're heading uphill in the right direction. You know, we're going, and hopefully we'll get a better guy. And now the courts are moving, and hopefully they're going to say this birthright protection that no, if you're under jurisdiction, if you're under the jurisdiction, you know what I'm saying. What the line is, under jurisdiction of another country, you're not a citizen, and your kids, just because they're born here, these anchor babies, that's got to be up. You know.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. That's been a big part of the problem is, the illegal immigrant women will show up at the border already pregnant and just, crank them out and say, you can't send me back home. All right. Well, listen, we're going to have to let you go. And my apologies to those people waiting on hold. We're going to have to clear the lines. We're waiting for Ammon Bundy, who'll be joining us in hour number 2. So we'll be right back after station identification. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are closed for the moment. We're probably going to open them a little bit later. We're still trying to connect with Ammon Bundy, and so we're going to do some news until we can get him on the line here. The Syrian village of Al-Hurriya came under attack, apparently from Israel. Locals reported multiple explosions, damage to some buildings, but no confirmed casualties. And it's believed the attacks were targeting Shiite militias in the village, which Israeli media always declares Iranian militias. And they're operating out of the village school, which was the center of many of the early attacks. And apparently, Canadians are calling on the Justice Department to investigate IDF recruitment in Toronto schools. And that seems rather surprising to me. Canadian law makes it illegal to recruit soldiers for a foreign state, but the line between enticing impressionable young people to oppress Palestinians and formal recruitment is unclear. So in an open letter signed by Noam Chomsky, Roger Waters, Ken Loach, Yan Martel, and former MP Jim Manley, poet L. Jones, and more than 150 others call on the Canadian Justice Minister to investigate the Israeli consulate for advertisements to recruit Canadians into Israel's military services. Okay, I've just been informed we have Ammon Bundy on the line now. So, Ammon, welcome to our show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's been a long time since the standoff at the ranch, and I can see that you've continued to be busy. But I understand right now you're dealing with a new, shall we say, confrontation with the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is trying to characterize American patriots in very, very negative terms.
Yeah, it's interesting because, the work that they do actually in both the Malheur case in Oregon and in, the incident with my father, the FBI actually used their work and ultimately our case was dismissed because it was based all upon lies.
Well, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long reputation of, shall we put it politely, inaccuracies. And the more I study them, the less they seem to have to do with either the law or with poverty. And it's mostly going on out and hurling negative labels at anybody they don't like, including yours truly and obviously the Bundy family.
Yeah, that is definitely accurate. The part that makes me ponder is why they have any credibility at all. I don't know why they have any credibility left.
Well, because the corporate media says these are credible people.
Yeah, it must be that. So they scratch each other's back and get what they want. But, you know, their reports and their investigations are completely biased. And because of that bias, they end up being inaccurate and just shouldn't be relied upon as true.
Okay, so what exactly has been going on recently where this is sort of heating up?
Well, what we've been doing here in Idaho, and then we've also stretched out across the United States, is we've organized some tools to allow people to unite in their local communities, if you will, so they can communicate efficiently and quickly. And there's some online tools and trainings, and we basically call it a network, and it's called the People's Rights Network. And so, you know, we've got about 37,000 people in it now that have basically joined with their neighbors in local communities across the United States, and we've done this in about, you know, less than 6 months. And so it's got their attention. They're concerned about it because we're actually uniting people that agree that the answer to a lot of our problems is simply to defend ourselves locally.
Okay. Now, what are some of the things that the Southern Poverty Law Center is doing right now that requires this kind of a networked response? And by the way, I'm looking at a web page right now describing the People's Rights Networks, and I'm going to put that up at whatreallyhappened.com.
Well, I think, you know, the best way to explain it is it's simply just political warfare. It's you know, the same steps that you see historically that one political power will do to another, and that is, you know, they are working using, you know, Center for Southern Poverty Law Center, many other groups as well, including different agencies. They basically have sought to isolate us. They're trying to basically make it so that our voice is not being heard. Of course, they've done this through, you know, your social media. They've outlawed anything with people's rights, any people's rights members, administrators, or anything. We've been wiped completely clean from Facebook and other media platforms, so that they're, you know, so that our message and growth will be stifled. And then, you know, if they can isolate us and keep us where, you know, we don't have a voice or we can't get our voice out, then, you know, they'll demonize us like they are with this Southern Poverty Law Center article or others that have gone out, and then they try to demonize, and they do that through lies and, you know, scaring people and using, you know, inaccurate information and basically misrepresent the facts, and they get the public to think, oh, this organization or these people are so dangerous to us, they need to be stopped. And if they can get the public to believe that, then they'll use the force upon us to destroy us. And so it's the political warfare, isolate, demonize, and destroy.
Okay, well, what are the goals and objectives of the People's Rights Network?
So our goals are simply to provide tools and education where people will unite locally. And what we want to see is that people in, you know, every community, whether it's by, you know, city or county or even into neighborhoods, where there, you know, are 500 to 1,000 people that have united in these areas. So whenever there's an issue, whether it comes to, like, you know, looting or rioting in their community, they can unite quickly and actually stop that. Or if the CPS is knocking on your neighbor's door trying to take their children, they can unite quickly, communicate quickly, and come together and stop that. And our efforts are focused on threefold. That is political defense, legal defense, and physical defense. And we're training each area and community to unite, and to build a political defense, a legal defense, and a physical defense.
You sound like a modern Minuteman.
Well, this is kind of like a neighborhood watch on steroids, as I've had someone explain it. That's kind of what it is. And it's really the way that rights have always been defended, where people had to get together, where they could be strong enough in a body, and then they defend their rights. They might do it physically, they might put funds together to do it legally or put a legal effort. They might, do it politically. And it's the way that rights are defended and protected, and it works. We have several great examples of it already working.
Well, now you just mentioned here that your organization and your individuals who are part of that organization have been subject to the same kind of social media shunning that we're now seeing leveled at conservatives in general, and certainly at the New York Post and everybody that is talking about the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, the money laundering that it seems to indicate was going on, the deep corruption, possible pedophilia, child molestation. How long have they been blacklisting you?
Well, Facebook did it, let's see, it was last Monday. So not this Monday, but last Monday. So, week and a half.
Yeah.
But they literally purged us from sea to shining sea all across the country. Anybody who referenced people's rights, anybody who posted anything from people's rights, anybody who was an administrator on the people's rights page, including, they not only took their people's rights page down, all the people's rights pages in different areas, but they also took all their personal accounts down, business accounts, and then they have this labeled where, like, even anybody tries to, they're identifying their IP address. So if they try to open a Facebook account, even when it has nothing to do with people's rights, they will not allow them to do that. Even if they have their same name or use their same name, they will not allow it. We've even, just for the fun of it, tried to open a Facebook account with spelling people's rights incorrectly, and they'll still shut it down within a few hours. This has been going on for the last week, and it's been fun to play with, because but that is what's actually been happening and how aggressive they are towards us.
Well, obviously somebody somewhere is very much afraid of the message you're sending out to the American people. And I assume that your website for the People's Rights Network is still up and running. And could you give us that URL?
Yeah, it's peoplesrights.org, peoplesrights.org. And we knew from the beginning that we were obviously going to have, trouble because we were uniting people. And so we put this on our own server with our own security, and we built it right. And all the communications system and everything we designed and built ourselves with our own code. And so we're not reliant on anybody to using this system. And it actually has worked. We've seen where they've tried to infiltrate and hack our system, and they have not been able to. Not that, that it could still happen, but so far we've been successful. And the way we have it organized is where, people's information just doesn't go into the system and available for everybody. It's we have been very strategic, and we have planned on this type of stuff happening from the very beginning.
Yes. Yeah. I can imagine going on back to the standoff at the ranch, that you became, shall we say, educated into the nefarious means that were going to be used against you. So where are you planning on going from here? I mean, you've been cut off from social media. You've got the Southern Poverty Law Center and the corporate media trying to defame you. Have you thought about defamation lawsuits? Or if not, what are you planning to do?
We have thought about them, but one thing that, again, from the beginning, we thought, well, we'll use these tools as long as they're available to us, but we will not depend on them. And so we didn't depend on them. We've built what we call a newsroom in our own on our own platform, where we can, post articles, share articles, and where we can, link articles to, and we have actually grown fairly significant since the Facebook purge over this last week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
We're growing actually at a greater rate than we were before, and so it's working. And there's a lot more to do. We have a goal. We want to first get 100,000 in each state, and then we're hoping eventually have 1 million in each state. And we can certainly have a great impact on a lot of different aspects, both politically, legally, and physically, with that type of unity. And it is not a hierarchy. Just get that straight. This is not a hierarchy. This is local people uniting, and the only thing that they have in common is other than a belief, is they're using these tools, the tools that we are providing for them to unite and communicate.
Well, that's one way of getting around social media, as long as the word gets out. And the fact that you've been banned by Facebook and the rest of social media is going to have the banned in Boston effect. And that explains why all of a sudden interest in what you're doing in your organization is beginning to take off. So can you give me some examples over the last few years about some of these fights that you've had to fight?
Well, let me give you a couple. First, there's the Bundy Ranch situation, where my father and family had been ranching there for 140 plus years.
Yes.
And we had deeds and titles to all our property, and federal government came in and said basically that it belonged to them and not to us. My dad said, no way. They run it through the federal courts, and it was a sham, basically. And then it sat there for 20 years. My dad says, well, I'm not giving up my ranch. No way. Sat there for 20 years, and when they thought they were politically powerful enough with Obama in place and environmentalists, posturing, they came after my family with 213 armed men, helicopters, MRAMs, and so forth, tried to destroy us. And we just began to film it and show everybody what was happening. And before we knew it, we had thousands of people all across the United States that came and surrounded my family and said, no way are you going to do another Waco or Ruby Ridge. You're not going to do this to this family. And they physically had enough presence that the federal government backed off and left the area and left the ranch alone. Similar thing happened or was happening to a family in Oregon, where we began to protest there. The federal government attacked us, killed one of the ranchers from Arizona, Lavoy, Finicum.
Yes.
And then arrested us and put us in prison for 2 years. We went through 2 federal trials where we were acquitted on all charges. Finally got home to our families. And then, it's kind of went back to living, went back to ranching and living. And I just, when this whole coronavirus thing came up, I could just see the destruction it was going to do to our liberties. So we began to unite and organize this thing. And we've had some successes. I don't know if you want to, me to explain any of the successes that we've had and how they've happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got a whole hour to fill.
Well, so one of the successes that I think is really great is in Washington, Olympia, Washington, there was a new couple that was having a baby, husband and a wife. They go into the hospital, excited, first baby. And this was kind of at the beginning of coronavirus craziness, COVID crazy. And they tested her, and she came back negative. So she goes into the delivery room. They test her again, and I guess she was positive. I don't know how that happened because it was just a couple hours later. But they didn't tell her. She delivered, and then they took the baby. And they took the baby and kept the baby away from the parents, wouldn't allow the parents to hold the baby. They could only see the baby through the glass, and they were forcing the parents to discharge from the hospital. And they said, basically, you got to go home and quarantine for 14 days. Then you got to take a test. It'll take a few days to get the results. And then after the results, if it's positive, you got to wait for 10 days, and then you can come get the baby. So at least pretty much a month. And the hospital was giving them no option. They were saying they're doing it under the authority of the Washington Disease Control, Department of Disease Control. And one of this new parent's friends was part of People's Rights. So informed us what was going on, the local people there, what was going on, and they issued a call out. And within hours of finding this out, we had hundreds of people at the hospital protesting. And we had thousands of people actually calling the hospital. And we had thousands of other people that were coming in from different areas to participate in this, demonstration, if you will. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take very long of that. It wasn't very long. I would say only a few hours of this, gathering and this calling. And the hospital realized that they were in over their head. And they backed away completely and blamed it on the Department of Health and gave the baby back.
I remember hearing about this. Okay, Ammon, I got to put you on hold. We have to take a break for commercial. We have some drills around here. We'll be back with Ammon, Bundy after these words. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Ammon Bundy and the People's Rights Network, and I posted a link to their website at whatreallyhappened.com if you'd care to drop in and take a look. And I think you really should. That story about the hospital that you just gave us basically indicates that you've got a very powerful grassroots organization right now, and I could see why the powers that think they are would be afraid of you, especially as we head into this very contentious election and a potentially equally contentious aftermath.
Yeah, it really has worked. Worked at the Bundy Ranch. That that pattern is something that we experienced and understood, and actually was even I don't know. It was very impactful for myself and my family and others that were involved, because we saw the power that people can have when they unite together and are willing to, defend their neighbor in doing what is right.
Yes.
We've had other successes as well.
Such as?
So again in Washington, we had a mother who had an 11-year-old child. A daughter. She was going through chemotherapy, and that chemotherapy was not working for her. She was having, terrible reactions to it, and the mother was advised that if she continues to keep her on this treatment, that it would probably kill the daughter. And so she began to seek for other remedies, seek for other medical help, and she refused to continue the cancer treatment. And there's a lot of details. The mother was actually successful at actually getting the cancer into recession, but during that process, the hospital, doctors, and CPS actually took the daughter away from her and wouldn't allow her for almost 9 months to have any contact while they forced surgery on the daughter and forced further medical treatment on her. And we found out about it, got involved, and we began to do the same thing. We actually began to, call overwhelmed CPS with phone calls. We began to set up protest demonstrations at the CPS office, at the CPS agent's home, at the prosecutor's home, because they were prosecuting the mother at the same time for actually, for medical abuse charges to her daughter, which is absolutely insane, because that's what they were doing to the daughter. Anyway, we began to put pressure on the court. We began to file motions to, dismiss and return the daughter back to the mother. And after all of this pressure went on for about 3 weeks, the court called an emergency hearing, brought everybody in. dismiss the case, return the daughter back to the mother, and it's been done. It's over. Case dismissed.
Well, that is definitely an exercise of public power, and I can see why people would be people in power would be very concerned, because the last thing they need is a force uniting the ordinary American people in the cause of protecting our rights or seeking justice. And you basically proved that your organization can do it. And I don't agree with it, obviously, but I can see why Facebook has basically cut you off a week and a half ago.
Yeah, it's been effective, and we're holding the bad actors accountable. The best, peacefully holding them accountable. We're actually, we're not above going to the CPS agent's home and passing out flyers to their neighbors of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
In Meridian, Idaho, Meridian police officer arrested a mother in a park for literally having her kids playing on the playground. I don't know if you heard about that. And that made national news.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
We activated our people's rights system, and we were at the officer's house within less than 2 hours of the arrest, and we served them with a notice of redress of grievance. And after that incident, Meridian Police Department said that they were no longer going to enforce any COVID restrictions. Now, I'm not sure if they've stayed true to that, but it still made an impact on them because we were willing to hold that officer accountable. And his neighbors got to see us in his neighborhood, and that we were not happy about it. And there was probably about 150 people that were there within, less than 2 hours at his. And we weren't there to cause, him harm but we were there to serve him and let him know that we were not okay with what he was doing, and that we will hold each officer and each bad actor accountable, at least politically.
Okay, well, Ammon, we're coming up here on another commercial break. We're going to open our phone lines now, 512-248-8252, but only call if you have a question for Ammon Bundy, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252, but we are only taking calls for Aaron Bundy or the People's Rights Network. And as a matter of fact, we have a caller on the line right now. Chance in West Virginia, do you have a question for Ammon Bundy?
Yes, hello, Michael. Hello, Ammon. I just called up to let Ammon know that I joined his organization a while back. Ammon, I believe I heard you being interviewed, if I'm not mistaken, on another RBN show. I think it was Ingrid Castle's show. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I got your information, and I joined up, and I encouraged all the listeners to do likewise. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you, Ammon. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much for the phone call. And we're already getting a lot of email here. Very, very positive. Glad to have you on the show and what you're doing. And I'm hoping that we're going to drive a lot of traffic to your website so that people can get more involved, because it's obvious that you've got a good grassroots organization going, and that's going to strike fear into the hearts of certain vested interests. Let's take another caller here from David in Boston. Hello, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hello, Michael, and hello, Ammon. Ammon, I want you to know you're one of my heroes. I really admire you, and I would describe you as just gentle strength. As Ernst Sundell used to say, you're a militant pacifist. Ernst Sundell used to describe himself as a militant pacifist, and that kind of described you, too. I'm a militant pacifist also. But my quick question, Ammon, is, have you gotten any support from the hierarchy of the Mormon Church, the LDS Church, like President Monson and the 12 Apostles, and do they acknowledge you?
Well, yeah, they acknowledge they're a worldwide church now. And I would say, like, I've got overwhelming support. I would say that there have been some messages that have come from some of them, such as Elder Bednar, that have, to me, been impactful on trying to make people aware of what is happening. I think he used the term as, do you hear the bell of freedom ringing or something to that effect? Anyway, but I communicate with, local leaders here, but haven't really had much communication at all from them on a church-wide basis, if you will.
Yeah, I had to kind of strain to hear you, but yeah. So I know the church, the people, the Mormon people, the ordinary Mormon people. I know they would support a man like you, But I remember, I don't know, and I'll be quick about this, but do you happen to remember Maynard C. Campbell? He wrote the book, the booklet about the massacre up at Ruby. He called it Ruby Creek, I believe. Does that name resonate with you, Maynard C. Campbell?
The name does, but that's about it. I apologize.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't. Doesn't.
I remember this. Yeah. Yeah, I remember he in a newsletter that I got from him. He felt like the Mormon Church just fed him to the wolves, and like the Mormon Church had betrayed him and everything. But anyways, hopefully they won't betray you, Ammon. And I keep you in my prayers, and may God and His holy angels, His invisible armies, protect you. And these invisible armies, they'll become visible if they need to be. So long for now, okay? And thanks for taking my call, Michael.
You're welcome. And before we take our next phone call, Ammon, I did a Google search for People's Rights Network. It did not come up with the web page itself, but just a bunch of articles about you and People's Rights Network, which were all very negative. I linked to one of them by mistake, and then I deleted it because when I got a chance to really look further into it, it was definitely another smear piece here. If there are good, positive articles about Ammon Bundy and the People's Rights Network out there, Google is definitely filtering them out. And Mike in our control room is saying that he couldn't get the actual web page for the People's Rights Network from the search engine, just the negative articles. So it looks like Google, along with Facebook, is trying to slam things down.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because we've had some actually interesting things that have happened with some of the same people that their Facebook pages were taken down that have also had Gmail, and we didn't know if that connection was because of the association or not. But again, peoplesrights.org, might have to just type it directly in. But peoplesrights.org. Now, there's another way to unite as well with us, and that is to text right to 80123. So you'd put the number, like in the area for the phone number, you'd put 80123, and then you would text right, and it will respond back to you with the short form, and you could join with your neighbors in your local area using that as well. So either text right to 80123 or go to peoplesrights.org.
Okay, let's go back to the phone lines now to Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Do you have a question for Ammon Bundy?
Yes, sir. Good day to you both, you gentlemen. Aloha. Yeah, Michael, first, we all know that he who controls the media controls the mind, and that's what the media has been doing, what his situation and everybody else's situation if they don't like you.
Well, I think it's safe to, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's safe to say the media is trying to control the minds of America. But I think what Ammon Bundy and People's Rights Network have demonstrated is that control is certainly not absolute. And from the scale of the grassroots network he has built, it's very obvious that people are turning away from corporate media, and they're looking to find out what's going on from other sources, including independent media.
And yes, Michael, I totally agree with you, 100%. Yes, a total agreement. But yeah, I remember when I was watching some of that situation, Mike, and it really made me sick, and it perplexed me that they're going after him. But here we have all these illegal aliens in our country murdering American citizens, and they try to keep that real quiet until finally we had a guy who exposed them. You know who I'm talking about. And for years, under a lot of these administrations, you never heard about all the illegal immigration, all these cities being overrun with murder and crime, and all the crimes that were being perpetrated on the United States. But this guy is defending the Constitution. He's defending our country and giving us, telling the American public about the freedom that we deserve and we rightly fight for. But here our country is being overrun with illegal immigration. And these people, like, I'm not going to even mention the institutions that have totally stabbed us in the back, allowed us to be stabbed in the back. And I'm not going to get into the Randy Weaver situation because we all know about that. But I'm talking about when you talk about, like you say, Mike, with sanctuary cities, article, what is it, Title 8, Mike? That's what I can't understand. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. Title 8 basically says what they're doing is illegal. Can we get back to Ammon, Bundy, and the People's Rights Network?
Yes, and that's why I think he's a great patriot. That's all I got to say. He's a patriot. Mr. Bundy,
I agree.
you are a patriot. That's all I got to say.
I absolutely
You're a patriot,
agree.
And that's all I got to say. Basically, is what our country's being overrun. Look, the President of the United States, Mike, doesn't even know how many illegals are in the country. He really won't even give you a real figure. Neither will bumbling buffoonery Biden. Nobody's telling you how many illegals in this country, how many sanctuary cities we really have in this country, and they're going after this gentleman. Unbelievable. It's mind-boggling. Anyway, Michael, thank you for taking my call. That's basically all I got to say. And hey, all I can say is with a gun, you're a citizen. Without a gun, you'll be a subject. And God bless the United States, and God bless our great founding fathers, and God bless you and Mr. Bundy, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the kind words. Thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to switch over to another Tom. This one's in Maryland. Hello, Tom. Do you have a question for Ammon Bundy?
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call. I had a question and a comment. Mr. Bundy, I think you and your brother are both true American heroes. Mike, I'll include you with that as well, and it has to be mentioned as well that Lavoy Finicum, another American hero. As a retired police detective, I have some information back during the Oregon standoff that, well, it was very important. It might have saved a life. I tried to get a hold of and did contact one person from Pete Santilli's group who apparently didn't pass the information on. How, if folks out here like myself, for future events, have important information, how would you, what would you suggest we use to get a hold of you and to make you informed of this important information that we might come across in the law enforcement community?
Well, I would have to say now, you know, in the past we haven't had really any way to network that would be practical. I couldn't just like say, hey, here's my phone number to everybody and here's my email. That would be practical. But again, I kind of refer back to people's rights, because if you were part of that network, then in your area, you will have 3 to 5 area assistants, what they're called, and you could contact them, and they can, you know, pass that information along and get it to me. And you can also, you know, pass other information, what might be happening in your own community, someone who is being abused in your own community, or rights that are being violated in your own community. And you could activate, you know, the people and basically take care of your, you know, issues there locally. That's what this thing is designed for, so that if there's an issue in a community, whether it's a, you know, a neighborhood or a city or a county, the people of that area that are part of people's rights can basically say, hey, look, we need to communicate, we need to activate, and we need to try to protect this person's rights and solve that themselves. And if they can't, or if they need more help, they can ask the areas around them to help as well. And then that can actually have a domino effect across the country, the way the network is designed. So hopefully that answers your question. But I would say, again, go to peoplesrights.org, join, text right to 80123, and you'll have some contacts there to communicate with.
I will do that, sir. And in closing, I just want you to know that a lot of people in law enforcement support what you did, what you're currently doing. And once again, thank you. Mike, thank you, and Mrs. Rivero as well. And I bid you all a good day.
I appreciate you saying that too, Tom.
Yeah.
I really do. I really appreciate you expressing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you very much for that. And we're going to switch over to Scott in New York. Hello, Scott. Do you have a question for Ammon Bundy?
Hello there. Yes, I'd like to express the same, like, holy wow, also, Ammon. Yeah, I've been following along this for years. I'm a victim of police corruption since 2005. Yeah, boy, it's not easy being knowing what's going on. However, I'm on your website now. It's saying you have to have a mobile phone. I can't do it with an email to join up.
Well, the whole point of the system, you actually can, but you have to go through the little loophole, which should be obvious to you when you try to set it up. But the whole point of this is, whole point is to communicate efficiently and quickly with your neighbors. So, yeah, one of the key pieces to that is having a phone.
Yeah, well, I try to do a phone that's not weaponized, that's not a military, secret weapon. That would be good. But I'm trying to network people together. Are you aware of the show that comes on 11 p.m., Red Pill Hardcore? They deal with a lot of targeted individuals that would really love to join up with your group. Same thing, there's another man on at 10 p.m., Alan, I forget his something, Alan. He also was trying to network with people. And when he had an event, nobody came down, like 7 people. There's going to be a Truth or Telethon soon in the next week or two, run by 2 women. I'd like to get all you people from RBPN and all targeted individuals and people that are awake to get together for this Truth or Telethon so we could all get together, on a bigger level. So I'll share that information with someone at the station, and I will join up with the email. And thank you so much for what you do. I've always been a fan of yours for years. I've been doing it. It's a shame what's happened to, oh, my God, the guy that used to run that Friday night Bill of Exchange call. The whole Colorado 12. It's just horrible what's been going on all these years. You are having some success, sir. Just keep it up, and many people like me are behind you, in spirit.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry it took so long with my babbling. Okay, peace.
All right, thanks an awful lot.
I'm not well spoken.
Well, thanks a lot for the phone call anyway. And a little quick program note. Frank Allen is on the air from 9 Central Time. And if you want to tune in and get that information. Now, I've got a lot of emails coming in, and one of them is saying to ask you about exactly what happened with Lavoy Finicum.
Well, first of all, Lavoy Finicum was a rancher that ranched in Arizona, basically across the border from us. My family ranches in southern Nevada. And he began to understand what my father was doing, and he began to experience some of the same things that he was experiencing. And ultimately what happened is Lavoy was a very good communicator, and he kind of hosted, if you will, his own little YouTube video platform that he called One Cowboy for Freedom. And he began to document the things that the Bureau of Land Management was doing to him, and how they were trying to, damage his ranch and push him off his land. And then he became aware of what was happening to the Hammond family in Oregon. And so he came up there and expressed his, support, and began to be a great communicator and a leader in that effort. And as we were heading over to Grant County, John Day, Oregon, they ambushed us and killed Lavoy Finicum, shot him 3 times in the back. The FBI and Oregon State Police.
Okay, I got to put you on hold for our last commercial break. Stay tuned. We're going to be back with Ammon Bundy after these few words. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today, we're talking with Ammon Bundy. And once again, his People's Rights Network website is peoplesrights.org. And Ammon, if you could give us that little text message portal one more time.
Yeah, it's text right to 80123. Right to 80123.
80123.
0123 with an 8 in front of it, and then just text right.
Okay, and that'll help you get signed up.
Yep, that'll actually, then it'll send you a link, and you go into that. You put in the information of basically your area. It does not ask for your address. It only asks for the very information that it absolutely has to connect you with your neighbors. And we do that all intentionally. It just asks you basically to show where you live on a map, not specifically, but that area, and then it takes your information and connects it with the others through a system that basically really works. And one thing that I would like to say is that technology, because a lot of people are afraid, and they have reason to be afraid of technology online and all that. And I get it. Believe me, I get it. But technology is like a double-edged sword. And if you're only allowing the one edge of the sword to be used against you, you're just going to be a victim. These gifts, these inventions actually, were inspired, I believe, every bit to be used for our defense, to be used to unite with each other. And if we don't use them, we just become at such a disadvantage that we allow the enemy to just take over and destroy it. So we are going to use this technology that people have invented, that have been inspired by intelligent people. We're going to use it to unite and to protect and defend our liberty.
Well, that sounds absolutely great. And one more time, the URL for the website is peoplesrights.org. And we're almost to the end of the show here. Somebody was writing in about a case where the judge said you couldn't use the Constitution in his courtroom.
Yeah, and actually both trials that we went through, and I went through many weeks of federal trial. The U.S. government spent $100 million trying to prosecute my family and law. And one of the things that in both trials they would not allow us to use is the Bible or the Constitution. And that should be alarming to people. The excuse that the judge gave is because she said, this was in Oregon, that she was the one that could interpret the Constitution. And she was the only one, in the courtroom that could interpret the Constitution. So therefore, we were not allowed to read it, because he felt like we would influence the jury by us reading it.
Well, I can see where that might happen. There's the music. Ammon, our show is over. Thank you very much for spending this afternoon with us. And once again, it is peoplesrights.org. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. Steve Elkins is going to be sharing the microphone with him. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. Keep us doing what we're doing for as long as we can. And we'll be back tomorrow with the lovely Lady Claire. Aloha, America.